My name is Catherine Rosario Perry. I was born in Rockland, Maine in the USA. I was born in 1972. My parents are Paul William Perry and Rafaela Odoshi Perry. Her maiden name is Rafaela Warakai Odoshi. I grew up in the village of Oliai on Saipan. I think I have a very curious mind. I love to learn. I love to be around people who can teach me history or things that I don't know. So I'm naturally interested in other people's stories. And then of course my background is in communications. So ever since I graduated from high school, I've been in some form of communication. And right now I host a radio show for the Northern Marianas Humanities Council. It's called Your Humanities Half Hour. And over the last 10 years or so, I've had the opportunity to hear a number of stories about people who have been through the war or researched the war. And aside from learning the history and people's experience, I have learned that a really important way I can serve the people that I interview is to just be a good listener and to create a space where they feel safe to share what they've really gone through, especially things that are less pleasant in life, our sadnesses, our fears, our failures. A lot of times we don't present that to people because we want to play a role. I mean, all of us do it, right? But if we can really open our hearts to each other and let people know it's okay to tell me who you really are and things like that, and then they feel comfortable to do that, it's kind of like allowing them a space to heal, to accept themselves, and then also build connection more with other people, like with me or other people in their lives. So it's really listening to people tell their stories, for me, is really almost like an act of love, so that we can grow together as individuals and as a community. I think, I don't remember exactly, but I think it was probably a year, just gathering the material and tweaking the story, getting quotes. And another thing we did was work on the Chamorro and Carolinian Memorial that's here, and it has the names of the Chamorros and Carolinians who died as a result of World War II. There was an existing list that we started with, but then we also solicited input from the community. We had announcements in the paper that if anybody had additional names that they feel should be added to the list, they could come and talk to us. And we did have people come in, and I remember that we were very particular about the wordage we used about whose names would be included. We stated not people who died during the Battle of Saipan, but people who died as a result of the Battle of Saipan and Tinian. In other words, perhaps the person was injured during the battle and they subsequently passed away because of those injuries. We didn't want them to be omitted. And so those people were included as well. And I remember when I actually went to visit the memorial for the first time after it was opened, I was surprised to see 3 names, Warakai, my mother's maternal side of the family, that were there. And I had never really considered that my grandmother only had one living brother. But then when I saw those names, the 3 Warakai men that had died as a result of World War II, that's when I started asking questions about, what had happened in my family and getting more of a sense of, my family's involvement in the war. I think one of those that passed away in my family was 2 years old, and the other one was 5 or something like that, which would have been, anyways. My earliest memory of coming to the park was when the beach was about 100 yards further out than it is now. It was basically a big family party. I remember there were pine trees out there right by the beach. There was a swing set, and I can't remember what the function was, but I do remember there were a lot of us there. Of course, a lot of swimming going on, barbecuing. So I didn't come here that often. I usually went to the beach at Oleai, but that's my earliest memory of coming to the park. And then when I was in high school, I used to come and play pickup soccer with the Korean men who always had a soccer game going on the weekend or weekdays, and that was a lot of fun also. I think you're going to, I think you may already know my favorite World War II story, which is about my mom. She was 10 days old on the day of the invasion, and long story short, my grandfather, she's the oldest, packed her and my grandmother and I think some other family members on a bull cart and took them up to hide in the caves during the war, during the invasion, and subsequently they were discovered by a Marine detachment or whatever it's called, and there was one officer that kind of took a liking to my mom and asked if she could be named after him. And his name, at that time he was a colonel, his name is Rafael Griffin, and we have been able to track down his family, and we are in contact with his descendants. And that's how my mom got her name Rafaela, because she hadn't been baptized yet. So she was named after this colonel. I was working for the Department of Community and Cultural Affairs, and the secretary at that time, Juan Albabalta, he was selected to be the chairman of the committee that would develop the exhibit here for the visitor center. And so he recruited his team, and I was a public information officer, and I was asked to be a part of the team, and that's how I came to have a part in making all this happen. So there were a bunch of people smarter than me who were also on the committee, historians, people who had, researched World War II here in the Marianas for a long time. So it was a really great opportunity to learn more and to share ideas. So I remember the first time we met with the company that was going to do the design. We all walked into the conference room, us, a local committee, and they had already done some mock-ups of what images might be, displayed in the exhibit, just rough sketches, and it was so funny when we walked in because we all sat down and nobody said anything. But we all knew what we were all feeling. And what we were feeling was all of these images were from the perspective of the US military. And that's not a bad thing. Obviously, it is American Memorial Park, but at the same time, and Mr. Babalta was able to express it, that there's more to this story than just the US military perspective. And so we were able to educate the design company on, the Japanese perspective and why that's important to us, why we, how we were a protectorate of Japan under the United Nations or through the United Nations, when they had businesses here and there were civilians here. And so that was the opposite side of the coin was also very important for us. And of course, the local story, which is what's important to us as locals, is where, to make sure that we include the voice and the stories of the local Chamorros and Carolinians who went through the war. And they got it right away as soon as we, shared with them that as the local design committee, that was very important for us to convey. And then we just shifted direction. And then today's exhibit, you can see very clearly that it's an inclusive, comprehensive story that hopefully will make people who come really think about what war is about and how it affects people, all the people involved. You know, we should all take pride in our work, right? The opportunities that God gives us to do something good for the community. But I feel that, like, I knew that when I was part of this exhibit that it was something that was very humbling, but also something that I could be proud of for a very long time, because of what it would mean to our community. And I always feel that when I come here, very grateful for the opportunity to learn so much myself, and also to be a part of memorializing this part of our history. And so in that sense, I'm very humbled and very proud. I knew that, like, out of all the things I've done in my career, this is probably the thing that will last the longest. Yeah, not to say it won't change, but yeah. Yeah, you know, it's such a small exhibit. I mean, it's not a really big exhibit, but there's a lot in here and a lot to think about, especially with the different perspectives. I think one of the really unique and beautiful things about the Marianas is that you can go outside and touch history, World War II history. You're walking on the pathway, you're going by Japanese defense positions, you know, you're out swimming in the lagoon, you can swim out to the tanks that are there. So many things like that. And so that makes it very real for us. There's not a kid that grew up in Saipan that doesn't know something about, or maybe a lot about, what happened here. So it's not removed. It's not in history books for us. It's in our everyday life. And I think that's a great opportunity for us to reflect. Number one, to know our own personal history, to know our history as a Commonwealth, and also to reflect on the deeper things in life. You know, how we, the interaction between nations and how that affects people. And, you know, the famous quote, you know, those who forget history are destined to repeat it. You know, we can look at what's happening in today's world, whether locally or internationally, through the lens of World War II, and gain perspectives that maybe people who aren't in touch with the history like we are, they may not see that right away. But we get to have a unique perspective on these things, because it's very much a part of who we are as families, individuals, and a community. Everybody should visit the visitor center. Everybody who lives here, definitely, or who visits, to really get a good understanding of what the Marianas is about, what Saipan and Tinian are about. This is a great place to learn that. And thank you to the Park Service for taking such good care of it.